Hey folks, welcome back. Today's drawing request was by subscriber Kill Bill 7465, and I asked viewers to supply me with superheroes as a prompt. I was going to make a tutorial on how to draw faces, but Hulk Hogan is a very intriguing character. I grew up watching Hulk Hogan, not so much as a wrestler, but he used to appear on the A-Team. And he was one of B.A. Baracus's good friends. So that's how I first became familiar with Hulk Hogan. And then later on, obviously, I did watch some wrestling, and he did appear in Rocky III. So I thought he'd be a very fun subject to study. The reference that I have for this particular image you can find on Google. I'm not posting it up here because I don't want to get the video flagged. Because I don't own that image, but I have the image on a second display, and I'm using that and referring to it as I draw. This video is sped up 400%, which means that you'll probably see the whole thing happen within 6 minutes. It took me about 25 minutes to go from a blank canvas to the final inked version, which you will see. Later on, after the video finished, I went back and added some color just for giggles. The interesting thing about this particular subject, at least the way I'm approaching it, is the reference shows him tearing off of a shirt, right? And what I opted to do is to draw his underlying structure, his body, first, so that I can get an idea of what was going to be covered by the torn shirt. And this is something that I think is really important when you're drawing a character wearing clothing. And if parts of their body is being concealed by their clothing, you still want to draw the underlying forms to make sure that things look correct. Otherwise, you might have anatomy not lining up the way it should. And you just get some really weird issues where characters' legs, for example, if they're wearing a skirt, don't line up with the rest of the body. So I recommend drawing through the form when you are trying to draw characters wearing clothing or interacting with clothing, or if they're partially concealed by something. Draw through the form. You can always get rid of that later. So this is an underdrawing. It's a very quick sketch, just blocking out proportion, just making sure the composition looks decent. And then I flip the image horizontally so that way I can make any kind of adjustments. When we all draw, we tend to have what I call bias in our arm, where it looks good because we're seeing it from the typical angle that we're looking at it. But if you flip your drawing, you will find that there's some slight distortion that's occurring, and you can correct that very easily using Photoshop. Once I have the main pencils blocked in, now I begin with the inking phase. For portrait studies, I typically like to start with the head and kind of work in the details. And then I just kind of move my way through the form. Where do you start typically, or where should you start? It really depends upon what you feel like drawing. So for me, I like to draw the head. It gives me a little bit more, it's one of the harder parts to draw. So I figured that just getting that out of the way allows me to then move to the rest of the body. So I'm inking this particular drawing, and what that basically means is I am committing specific lines. I'm not tracing what I've drawn. I'm just using the underlying lines as a guide, and I'm essentially redrawing the image, but taking into account the fact that I've got forms that are overlapped, and I'm just not drawing the parts that are not going to be seen. So I'm not drawing Hulk Hogan's chest where the shirt is covering the chest when I'm going back through the inking phase. In the reference, there is some dramatic lighting on Hogan, so I try to bring some of those elements in. So I add some shading. That's the areas that you see, underneath his left arm and right arm. That also just makes the image pop a little bit more. Especially when I'm inking, I like to think about the fact that the ink should stand alone before I add any color to the drawing. If it's just lines, it may not necessarily have the same punch that it would have if I were to add some black fills and some hatching and so forth. So now I can get rid of the pencil reference. I typically hide that layer, and in a few seconds you'll see the final reveal. Drawing portraits is a great way to practice your drawing ability. Anytime you can draw from reference, I think it gives you something to aim for. You don't necessarily have to copy the reference verbatim, especially when you're doing a quick study like this. I have obviously taken some liberties if you look at the reference from what the photo had, but I am trying to do my best to keep it recognizable, but it's not a complete copy of the reference. You can do that, but this is just the way, this is just a warm-up sketch, so I'm not really, the goal here is not to spend an inordinate amount of time on it. It's just to kind of get the blood flowing. So if you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you'd like to see next. The final reveal will be coming up right now. Thanks so much for watching.